Or here we go. Cat. Okay, so let's see, where should we start? I actually am going to start with, I'll first explain what this is. This is coolers.
Slow down. Introduce yourself. Introduce me. Tell us what we're doing. What are we going through? What are we doing?
Okay, I thought we were gonna do a casual thing, like I was just explaining to you, but now
This
I'm
is
talking
casual.
to an audience. Now I'm talking to an audience.
We
Okay.
are the audience.
Okay, so I'm Kenzie. I am the lead designer at Housing Joint Venture, and Green Monkey is going to be building this subdivision. So we're just talking about the kind of branding that we're going to do for this. And like I just told John, this is going to be the anchor that we kind of build off of, like the values, the colors, the fonts that we're going to use for mood boards, aesthetic choices, and everything. So I'm just going to explain the process and then like the decisions behind why I chose some of these colors and fonts and art styles. So this first tool here, this is coolers.com. And I knew, first of all, that I think blue would be a good place to start us with, because when we were reading these buyer personas and everything, all the people that we're working with are very like traditional, and blue is the most like, everybody loves blue. Like when they do polls and everything asking people what their favorite color is.
Oh,
like,
look at your nails. Look at your nails.
I tried out one of our colors.
On brand.
But yeah, so blue is always like, it's a happy color. Everybody's happy with blue. And so I was like, we're gonna start there and at a place where it's gonna make everybody like traditionally happy. When you're in a neighborhood and it's like you're living there, you want to choose a color that everybody's gonna like. And so I started doing this, and you basically, it lets you hit the space bar and it shows you just complementary colors and everything. So I got like a few complementary ones, and then I started just playing with it to get these, and I was like, okay, I kind of like these colors. And then I started reading about them, and one of them, this cornflower blue, was actually really great, and it led me down a whole like path with this into art and everything, and the history behind cornflower blue and what it means. So that one was good. But for a lot of these, I realized they weren't actually going to work for us because there's a lot of gray tones in them. And while they're calming at first, it ends up making people more depressed, like the more that they see them. So I did like a lot of these colors, but we had to make them a little bit brighter. And you'll see with like this light blue, like this is much different here than some of these. Like I'm just gonna show you how it changed. Like you can see the tones are just brighter in this, even though it's like staying kind of the same. There's no gray in it anymore. So these were some of the ones that kind of were contenders up there, but I said no to them. For first, let's go over the 4 that did win out. So we needed 2 neutral colors, and usually for brands that's like black and white, but we've seen before, like we've gone into hotels and stuff, and like the black is just like too harsh. Like when it's black and white, it looks like almost fake, kind of like I forget what we were saying about it, but we were like, oh, it doesn't look like right. It looks like too modern. So these are they're softer. They're still very close to black and white. Like when you're looking at them, it's almost just like a little bit of an off-white color in Onyx, which is more of a dark charcoal gray. So white, obviously, it's one of the most important colors in art. Even in design, it's really good. Like white space is very powerful. And then white is considered a very powerful color in feng shui, so to arrange things to create harmony. So wood and glass are going to go excellent with these. This color is great, but so like we said, the off-white is just warming it up a little bit. Like the white can be very stark and harsh, and this like just kind of radiates a little bit more warmth while still retaining all the positive qualities of white. So Onyx, this is one of the most like versatile colors ever. It's gray that has actually has a little bit of blue tones in it, which is why it looks so good with these and complements them. But it's still like when you see it by itself, it looks like very, very dark. And it's so you can pair it with darker colors and it just makes it look very elegant. Basically, anything this color is next to, it's going to make it look bright and just sophisticated. So it is very similar to black. It's like minimalist, but it's just more refined than just doing plain black. So sky blue, cerulean, baby blue. This is lots of history behind light blue. Obviously, a very peaceful, calming color. And a lot of brands use this light blue in their branding because it is really trustworthy and everybody likes this light blue. It's very gentle. So we, like I said, this was the blue that we went with because it's one of those things where it's like everybody likes this, everybody can appreciate this color. And there are different versions of it we could do, but I was like, I don't know gray tones because that's going to be depressing. If we do like a navy blue, it can sometimes be like too severe and bigger doses. So light blue with like all of the history and just happiness behind it is what we went with as one of the main colors. So cornflower, what caught my eye was this came from the Mediterranean. It was very important then, and we have obviously we're drawing a lot of inspiration from Greece in our design. And so this is just talking about like there are many beautiful colors you'll find in a garden, but when you spot a species grown entirely in blue, you stop and take notice. And we were attracted to when we were picking out landscaping, like these bright blue flowers, and we were like, oh my gosh, this is so gorgeous. And it's rare. There's not that many in existence. This color itself is like quite rare. You don't really see it a lot, this cornflower, but it's really beautiful. And it's sincere. It's a symbol of refinement just because this color was so expensive to make in paintings and everything. And you'll see in a lot of these impressionist paintings and stuff, like it's established as luxurious and sparingly used. So this color is just like very impressive. Like it makes you stop and stare at it whenever you see it. And it was very popular, and it still is popular today because you don't see it a lot in design, but it's one of those things where it's very powerful in small doses. So that is cornflower. And so those were the four that I chose for us to kind of branch off of, and we can discuss if we want to stick with that or if there's edits or anything. But then I wanted to explain some of the other ones and why they weren't chose. So Oxford, this like navy blue was one of the first ones, and like at first glance, it's refined, it's sophisticated, and it looks good, but it's too heavy, like in high doses. Onyx won over Oxford because Onyx, when it's next to things, actually brightens the tones, and Oxford kind of just overpowers them. So any color that's going to be next to, it's going to be just like too much. So Onyx is more of a sophisticated color that can evolve with the brand as we might change colors or styles or anything. Onyx is going to be steady with that. National, I liked the name of this one too because, National Preserve Belmont. And at first appearance, it's calming, but we kept seeing this like blue gray tone, and we even talked about it. We kept seeing it in kitchens and stuff, and we were like, what is it with this? Like, it's really nice, but the gray tones in these are it can start to become kind of oppressive, and it can actually depress people once they see it for a very long time. So it's okay to use like sparingly, but it's just not something that we want to go all out with. Yonder, similar to cornflower, but it's a little bit too safe. Like it's a little bit stormy. The cornflower has more of a bright like purple tone to it. That's still, it's like, oh, I don't really see that a lot. Yonder, it's like, okay, it's just like a denim blue. So cadet, we did settle on a light blue. When I pulled that over, you could see it was very close to it, but it was still different because we chose the sky with the brighter tones and to mimic the like impressionist paintings. And with this one, it's just too gray again. And then between sand and like this cream color, I knew we wanted like an off-white, but the cream just looked too like antique and we needed something that was more neutral. So I updated it to like a gray color it was more blue leaning than yellow leaning. So that made it feel more modern. And then that slate was kind of an in-between of the sand and cream. So those are the colors. And then let's see, what should we move on to here? So then based on our demographics, we won't get like way far into the weeds on these because we kind of know people don't need to know like everything about it, but a lot of the people here, there's a lot of money in Springfield that you might not see on first glance, like we were talking about, and it's a lot of traditional living. Like these are hardworking people who have worked hard for their money, and a lot of them are more conservative. You do have younger people coming in, and that's kind of like what we were talking about. We were like, who's going to be settling in these neighborhoods? And a lot of our buyer personas were like more progressive younger people, but then you also have these older, like my dad, like a conservative like older guy who wants like tradition. So it's like, how do you merge those two together and create like design that both of those people are going to like? And so as I was researching cornflower and everything, there's something called the Google Arts and Culture tool. And what you can do is you can put in a color code. So I put in our cornflower hex code, and it brought up all of these beautiful paintings and stuff from museums all over the world.
Would you mind going to your browser and actually just showing us briefly what that looks like?
Yeah, Google Arts and Culture. So as you can see, like when you put in green, so when I put in cornflower, you can start to see some of these blue ones coming up. Like that was one of them. Yeah, it's just really beautiful. And so Monet was one of them that I found. And so we're gonna go into it a little bit, but this was really like we talked about, like greenhouses and like our cafe and all the stuff we wanted to do. And this had like a very romantic feeling to it that's also traditional because everybody loves Monet and his work is like very dreamy and transformative. And so like we said, he paints landscapes on the edge of unreality, but it's still a genuine reflection of the beauty there. So he was a man of knowledge on the mystic path of enlightenment, which was kind of like progressive, but he was still spiritual and peaceful. So he's a happy medium, a centrist that still somehow succeeds in pleasing everyone. Immediately upon seeing his work, we're lulled into a mood of tranquility. His work is reminiscent of being a kid, falling asleep on a warm couch in the summertime while a soft breeze makes the drapes dance. So all of his works, when you look at them, and I'll show more pictures, kind of give you the sense that you've like embarked on a journey before seeing what's before you. Like it's a lot of beautiful landscapes from like mountaintops and everything. And it just gives you this like, it's like a breath of fresh air, like relief, like so he had this motif of the weeping willow, which we'll get into, but he basically was in the middle of like World War I as he was painting and doing all of this, and he was like, oh, I want to give up, but he kept painting through it, and he stayed in, I believe he was in, I think he might have been in Armenia or something, I don't know, but he stayed throughout the middle of the war and he painted through it, and it became kind of a symbol of like hope and resistance. So since the late 19th century, Impressionism has donned the walls of many homes and become one of the world's most respected forms of painting. It's a beautiful traditional choice that pleases everyone. Because of the brush strokes, it stirs great emotion within people. Museums are adorned with countless Impressionist paintings, and because of this, anything associated with classic Impressionist art has an institutional feel behind it. Monet was selected for his dreamy, happy feeling. When you look at the work, you're transported to a park on a sunny day. Then I said, after looking at our market landscape, these traditional art choices will be well received by our neighbors and buyers. So Monet was was one of them, and I believe we have more paintings. Obviously, these need to be put in order. I was in the middle of putting them into a presentation, but here's more of the cornflower and art, like when I was doing that, and it's just, yeah. And it, like, this specifically is like really beautiful. Like I can see that being our, the little ponds in the middle with our greenhouse and the grass and everything. It's just
I
like
could also feel this like on our model home. Imagine on the walls when we need art and wall hangings, and
Monet.
even the not just the institutional feeling, but the embellishments of the gold frames and what you can do to kind of finish them and make it feel
Yeah.
settled.
Yeah.
Yeah, would be incredible because then you have these subtle gold accents that are not the primary, but definitely reinforce this like playful
Blue.
but you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
beauty.
Love that. So that's actually a good segue into some of the landscaping stuff. I wasn't going to include this. I was going to work on mostly branding, but the Impressionists, the everything really inspired this as well. And I think it'll be a good anchor too. So these were some of the, when we were in Greece, I did research on some of the plants and everything. So false indigo was one of the ones that really caught our eye, and we were like, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful and it's easy to grow there. So we wanted to do that, and it happens to be that cornflower blue. And then obviously cornflowers as well, really easy to grow. And they have that bright, like beautiful feeling. We also see this motif of the weeping willow in a lot of the impressionist art because it has that dreamy, like flowy feel. And wisteria specifically, I chose this because it symbolizes long life and immortality. Its vines are going to be around long after we're gone. Wisteria is a way to symbolize our community will be around for hundreds of years. It's not a subdivision that pops up and decays after a couple of decades. This tree symbolizes care and time and means we're putting down roots.
It feels very Savannah, Georgia, to be honest with you, with the weeping willows.
Mm.
So definitely established in long term.
Um, then the ivy and moss cover is another thing. The ivy is, established. But with ivy and moss, it actually greatly reduces the need for upkeep in landscaping while being more aesthetically pleasing than just grass. Like you can use ivy and moss as ground cover too. Um, and then to work with the modern feeling of the house, we'll show the 3D renders too, but we have the staggered and almost like the steel look on the outside, and we could expand with like trellises over the back in the back gardens and then hang like ivy and everything. And it's a way that it's not super expensive, like it'd be easy for our steel to go up, but with this hanging on it, it's like really gives you your own sense of like peaceful in paradise when you're on smaller lot sizes. To have this and have the plants hanging down and kind of giving you that cover would be really nice. So those can be extensions of the patio that continue our like flowing walk-through effect that we had going on. More ground cover. This is different landscaping, but I specifically chose these because it reminded me of the Impressionist paintings, like just the little dots of color just all over the grounds. Like when you look at this picture specifically, it feels like you're looking at a painting. And then lastly, we were talking about sorry, my cat's distracting me. Going into the neighborhood, the actual, what's that called? Like the divider at the beginning with the sign and everything. So hydrangeas were another thing that came up when you look at cornflower blue. This is like one of the huge examples of them. And these are kind of like a status symbol because they're really hard to take care of. And this color isn't easy to get in nature, that like cornflower blue, because the cornflower flowers are actually a weed. And this is like a flower that has that color, and it's like difficult to upkeep. So they're traditionally associated with like, like Nantucket, like just East Coast, like wealthy homes and everything. And they can be like time consuming and expensive for upkeep. But strategically placing them, I feel like will give it that like impressive, like traditional feel. And so I was like, this could be a good thing to put a couple of bushes of them at the beginning of the neighborhood at the entryway. So you get that pop of blue color. And it's like you're always going to be taking care of that area. So it's not like you have to go all around the neighborhood doing landscaping for these, but can be really helpful. So that's some of that.
Take us through the typography, because now I'm interested in the lettering that even when I think about that entryway, and if it does say Belmont Preserve or that level of establishment, take us through that.
Yeah. So cormorant. So I chose this because it's a spin on a classic serif font, a font that I think it's Garamon's that it was, and that's it's kind of like a newspaper font, but it's a little bit clunky, and it hasn't been updated for screens, so it can be kind of hard to read sometimes. Like that's the only issue with serif fonts. Typically, people are like, "Oh, it's hard to read because of all the little things." So this font is still traditional, but they've updated it, and you can see they've made these like very thin, so it does still feel like established, but it's still very readable and like light and airy. Um, so yeah, it's been clarified for screens. It's very easy to read, but it's still like, oh, that's elegant. So that's what I chose that. And then I wasn't gonna do this, but I was like playing with doing our words like we do for housing joint venture. And I was like, that's kind of a nice way to tie it together. And I think it actually does work pretty well here. Um, so headings, subheadings, I'm sticking with the open sans for body text because we do that in most of all of our brands. So and then this is just different weights and different ways that it can be written. So obviously like some of these are different languages, so it looks different, but
Excellent. I like it. I like it a lot.
greenhouse cafe. So I did a little bit about the history of the greenhouse and everything. And we were like, oh, instead of just doing a retention pond and some trees in the middle, we wanted to have like a little coffee shop or something. So this could be a place to, put those flowers in. And then it's like literally just a tiny, like few seat coffee shop or tea or whatever. So I did a little bit on the history. Um, the greenhouse, otherwise known as the Victorian glasshouse, became an iconic feature of British gardens during the Victorian era. As the Victorians' love of gardening grew, the need to house their fragile, temperature-controlled, and valuable plants did too. The glasshouse provided a home for these species while also paving the way for plant experimentation and cultivation. However, glasshouses were only originally used by the wealthy and elite Victorians. Glass and window taxes made it incredibly expensive to create even the smallest glass on buildings, and they became a status symbol of privilege. Elaborate, bespoke glass buildings were created to maximize light and create the perfect temperature for plants previously only grown abroad. So botany was incredibly popular during the Victorian time. It was most popular science in the 19th century. Plants were discovered all over and brought back to the UK to study. So these things became kind of like a symbol of like the Enlightenment and just learning and science, but also still a beautiful art that people could enjoy. And the greenhouse merges perfectly with the Impressionist art style. It really looks like it could be the subject of one of Monet's paintings again. Like when you look at stuff like this, it looks like it could just, the 19th century Victorian era. What else do we have to go over? I think that's most of it.
So let's pull up the new Springfield mood boards, whether it's from Westmont or Belmont Preserve. But let's contextualize what you've done here. There it is, down under slate.
This one?
Yeah, let's start here.
Okay.
So one, I love this. Compositionally, I think it's great. You've actually done the embellishment that I was just thinking in my head with this gold frame where I can feel it. It reinforces that Monet aspect. One level of feedback is we need, and it doesn't have to happen in this particular mood board, but as we have variations, we need some level of minority inclusion. I know Springfield is majority dominantly Caucasian. However, we need to at least make someone feel like they are welcome into our community, especially since I'm a minority developer. So that was a little bit of feedback we got. I love what you've done with the coordinates up top. That could easily turn into merchandise. It could easily turn into a postcard, etc. I think we should include the name of the town. Maybe if you wrapped it around the violin or something in this new font that you have, that would provide, that curvature right here at this kind of top left corner. Because then that would feel complete. Otherwise, I think it's beautiful. The other moderate shift that we could entail is instead of vertically orientating it, I would almost go horizontal, because then when we present it on Housing Joint Ventures website, we're really, we're optimizing for web view. But otherwise, I think it's well done. Is this one of the color selections that we have from the study?
So after I learned a little bit more, it's very close to the light blue, but it needs it's a little bit different. So I will update those ones with the, and then I'll put the cornflower. I'll put all 4 colors behind it, and we can decide which one looks best.
Okay. And then what about the actual, whether it's the house render or the schematic? Can you pull that up and let's talk about that and what you've done?
So we'll pull up. It's hard to see on this one, but first I went in and I tried to give it more depth by adding some more lines so you can kind of like really feel and visualize the, because we have a lot of good like depth in here and stuff, and it was getting a little bit lost, so I put that in. So slate probably won't be the best option for this. I might have to turn it white, but you can still see a little bit down there.
So with this, because we're gonna have multiple projects, our suggestion would be, I think this is great. Maybe you do 3 color variations so they feel like 3 separate projects when we go to the final platform for the offering. As well as, yeah, 3 color selections. And then maybe you shift the plan view so that we're viewing it from alternative angles.
Okay.
Otherwise, I think, from a board standpoint, from an orientation standpoint, I think this looks excellent.
Cool. All right.
All right, well, that's going to conclude this recorded session. You could go ahead and finish the recording for now, and then we can just talk offline.
All right, sounds good. How do I stop recording? Wait. Oh, stop.